Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Sweet Spot. This is your host, Ryan Embrew, with another edition of our TMG Hospitality Trailblazers. We've got a fantastic episode, first time guest. I'm going to bring him right into the conversation. Paul Coury, Chairman, CEO of Coury Hospitality. Paul, thank you so much for being with me on The Sweet Spot.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. We're going to have a great conversation today all about Coury Hospitality. But, as many times as we've done this TMG Hospitality Trailblazers, whether this is your first or 12th, 15th time hearing this type of series, what this all about is about the pioneers, hotel management companies, brands that are pushing our industry forward towards the future. We work in such an amazing industry, and certainly Coury Hospitality. And Paul, you've done some great things we're going to talk about. But before, as many times as we've done this episode, I can guarantee you one thing: this question is never answered the same way, because no two hospitality professionals have the same upbringing or journey into hospitality. Share us a little insight and background into your journey that ultimately led you to Coury Hospitality.
Well, thanks again, Ryan. I look forward to trying to enlighten your audience today. It's a great industry. Um, I have heard this term by a lot of hoteliers that they are accidental hospitality
Yeah.
uh, individuals, and I kind of fall into that category. I've never worked in a hotel. I never, maybe a few restaurants when I was super young as a busboy or something, but mine was a journey of starting a real estate company in the mid 80s, and we purchased a building, and next door to this building was an old historical hotel in Tulsa that had sat there unoccupied for many years, and we ended up purchasing that asset as a strategical uh, consolidation with the building and some land that we were buying. And then we set out on a journey to redevelop it. And I think at the time we were going to we were working with Hyatt to do one of their first suite hotels. And it happened to be a bad time, like all cycles, right? We caught ourselves in the middle of the big oil bust that hit and lasted 20 years in Oklahoma. So while we never developed that hotel, it did subsequently get developed. We owned it for 10 years, and it introduced me to some people in the industry through some exposure, marketing exposure. And we ended up doing some consulting for a family out of Chicago that owned many hotels and golf courses around the country. And, what I would say to you is that was my first exposure to the concept of a boutique hotel, because these were really small hotels that were very, uh, I don't know if I would say run down, but they weren't cared for. They weren't a true design or boutique, but they were great locations. For example, the Royal Palms was one of them. There were others like that. There were some ground leases, the Phoenician Resort, the uh, Harbor Beach Marriott, things like that. So I was exposed to the industry and learned a lot about small hotels and family owned operations and things of that nature. And our first actual hotel occurred in the mid 90s when we purchased another building, historical building in Tulsa, and converted it to a boutique hotel. And it opened in 99. It's the Tulsa Ambassador, and we still own it 25 years later. I'm not a very good seller. And it's been a magnificent asset. It's been like the golden goose in so many respects. It's just outperformed itself 4 years and still remains top in the market 25 years later.
Well, how special, for that property to still be, one of the leading performing ones in the portfolio, which is really cool to see. And yeah, your story is one that we can relate to on this podcast. We've had many people sit in that chair and essentially say the same thing. I fell into the industry, so for those HR professionals out there that are hiring, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone in hospitality that is going to be your next hospitality star, especially with staffing shortages that we definitely been combating in
Yeah.
our industry for the last couple years. Thinking outside the box, because a lot of these hospitality professionals don't expect to have the type of hospitality start or have that vision for the future, and then you end up like stories like yours, Paul. So let's shift our conversation. Beautiful portfolio over there at Coury Hospitality. Uh, Obviously known for being the largest operator of Autograph hotels. I've actually had my start in hospitality at Autograph Hotel. Love the collection. Why do you feel like the Autograph Hotel collection is such a great fit for Coury Hospitality?
Um, we joined that brand in 2014, and I think they launched it in 2008. And I was courted to bring four of our hotels in for a couple of years before we did. And um, the the brand was the first boutique soft brand to really hit the market. Marriott was ahead of Hilton and Hyatt by 4 or 5 years, and they really did a good job of understanding what they were trying to create. And I think they held true to that brand. Initially, it was mainly historical buildings that they would bring into in special locations and so forth, and ones that didn't fit a brand profile, the design, the rooms, etc. But there were standards that they had created that you needed to comply with and minimums, and they would create some PIPs. So for the four that I had, that were all historical buildings that we did at a very 4-star level, in my opinion, it was a really good fit. Subsequent, it just became an incredible performer for us. We saw RevPAR growth of plus 30% over the first 2 or 3 years. And those are big numbers.
Yeah.
And in some of the assets, I already thought were at the top of the market. The evolution of that and where we are today is you've now got a Bonvoy brand in the case of Marriott, with 2 million members, 200 million members, I'm sorry, and over 150 autographs open, and uh, more in the pipeline. The evolution of the Tribute, which is another version of autograph. But for us, it allows us to do our thing, design them at a high level, highly activate them, have good brand pull through, and each hotel has its own story. Each one has its own mini brand within the Autograph brand. So for us, with our creativity and the way we approach hotel, being a hotelier and our design platform, it's just been an incredible fit, and it was almost like it was made for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have the thresholds of, it's exactly what you said. I mean, with the strong brand behind you, you don't have the thresholds of maybe a traditional brand to say that, this is the limit of my ADR, this is the limit of my RevPAR, and you can tell that story, you can design that story to a place that's compelling and competitive for guests when they come in, to have that unique experience that they might be paying, that they might be willing and to pay a premium for. So obviously a lot of success in the lifestyle hospitality space and sector. Being a leader in that lifestyle hospitality, are you noticing any trends right now? As we get into 2024, and how are you evolving kind of your operations on hotel operations side to kind of stay ahead of the competition?
Good question. I mean, there are a lot of people in that space now.
Yeah.
And it appears that everyone, in some form or fashion, with all brands, wants to look unique. They don't want to look homogenous,
Hmm.
which is a good thing. But it does make it tougher to meet the customer's expectations. And again, this is kind of becoming a little bit overstated, but COVID also created some new challenges and expectations with the guest after coming back. And so what we did was, and we kind of made this decision in the midst of COVID, and we were looking at what happens when you come out of this. We started saying, well, activation is going to be critical, unique activations. Yeah, great, you've got a rooftop bar and you've got a speakeasy or you've got a nice bar. So, but now what? So within those spaces, you have to create unique opportunities for people to go experience something they haven't experienced before. Whether it's some of our speakeasies we turned into dinner clubs, the old school dinner clubs. We really leaned heavily on music. We One of our properties has 3 or 4 opportunities to listen to music on any given night if the weather's right, and you can open up a couple of your outdoor spaces. Um, we've really empowered we call our employees experience curators, and so the notion there is that people are uh, collecting stories and experiences, and it's up to me. As much as I would love to greet everyone and make sure that my brand and is pulled through, I have to rely on my experienced curators to do that. So we've really focused on having them understand our culture, what we're trying to deliver to the guest, and that it's not just anymore, saying their name and saying, "Here's a bottle of water."
Yeah.
So on check-in, you do something unique. You may have a specialty cocktail that's paired with a food appetizer or something in their room or something that in the afternoon they can come down and participate in the property. So, Ryan, one of the things that occurs to me that's changed in the hotel world too is, when I was early on in my career, hotels were still a place that people would go in the community and gather, whether it was a business meeting or a social event. And then somewhere along the way, that kind of went out of vogue,
Yeah.
and it was the last place you wanted to go. And people would check in a hotel. You may have a great steakhouse. They would say, "Where's a good steakhouse?" Right here. They wouldn't buy into that. They're like, okay, great, I'm going to go down the street. So it's changing again. Now hotels are the community gathering spots, and so when you design those, you've got to activate those in a way where you've got multiple opportunities to meet what you may want or what someone else may want. I mean, you can't be everything to everyone, but you want more than uh, one thing. You want several things, and if you come and then whoever's with you, well, okay, well, we had a nice dinner. Let's go down to the speakeasy where they specialize in cocktails, handcrafted cocktails, or we have a wine venue where it's all it's a private club, and you can buy individual glasses of high end wines and in a very intimate setting. So it's really so much more. And then when you design the property, it's also the uniforms, it's the sound, it's the smells, it's the what do the table settings and the plateware, do they pull through with the brand, and someone sees that something feels really good and right, but they can't tell you what it is, right? They can't say, oh, this uniform and this silverware matches what I'm seeing around me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the type of stuff that rises above that level of sameness, right? And one of the places we talk about on the podcast is to say, well, how well are you telling your story? Is what type of feedback are other guests sharing to future guests online, right? And I don't remember, to your point, I don't remember the last review that I saw. Well, guess what? I got this really great bottle of water when I checked in, right? But it was something where, we went into this beautiful lobby. There was music playing. It kind of set the energy and the vibe for my stay. That's the type of feedback that you want online for that next traveler to see. And I think it's a fascinating trend what you brought up. You're actually the first person that's kind of opened my eyes to this, but you're right. Getting the community back into the hotels. What happened during last couple of years was our radius of travel shrank to, because we didn't want to get on planes or anything like that back in COVID. So what we started looking at was maybe those unique properties that we hadn't experienced, that has a unique experience right in our backyard.
Hmm.
So to see more and more people do that, and to be set up in a place where I can give you a unique experience. I can give you something that you're not going to find a couple exits down the road. I think
Hmm.
sets you up for success moving forward, and certainly is going to be something that owners and developers are going to look for. And I want to just kind of pick your brain a little bit, Paul. When you have those conversations about a new property, which we're going to talk here in a second about one of the newest ones coming up for Coury Hospitality. But when you have those conversations, give us some insight into how you kind of curate for owners and developers every aspect of that experience, from culinary to entertainment, design. Art is a big piece, I know, in your portfolio as well. Give us a little insight into that.
Well, I think I'll give you an example.
Sure.
In Kansas City, we had a historical hotel, and then we added a new wing on, a new architecture. And we opened up, and COVID hit, like it did for so many people. And so we basically moved our restaurant and bar outside. And we had on the new building, we had a one-story parking that you could pull under the building with open sides. So we ended up putting some curtains up. We took furniture out there, and we started serving dinner out there, and we brought in some music, and it became incredibly popular. So I happened to be there one night, and they brought in this musician that I'd never heard before. That was a well-known jazz musician in Kansas City. His name's Lonnie McFadden, and I heard this guy, and I was blown away. Not, I mean, he was a great musician and all that, but he was a storyteller. He tap danced, he played instruments, and he talked about the history of jazz in Kansas City. He was in his late 50s at the time, I think, and he had a family legacy that went back to his father. So I approached the guy and I said, "Look, uh, you've got a great show. Why have you not ever done your own venue?" And he's like, "Well, people have told me this, and it's never happened." So we happen to have in our old building, in the basement, our old ballroom. That, we had a new ballroom in the new building. So we ended up negotiating a deal with him where we created a jazz dinner club and put his name on it. And it's called Lonnie's Reno Room, which was named after an old club in Kansas City. And we did a menu that's old school: beef Wellington, you know, cordon bleu, things like this. And it was a prefix menu, and you would pick one of each items. And we designed a stage, we did low lighting. It's really, sexy space. Well, what a success story it's been. Can't get in. He's been voted the last 3 years the best jazz musician, best venue. And when you go down there, you see all age groups. You see super young kids on a date, very special date typically, or you see people my age and older going down there for just with a group, special occasion. But the the whole story, the branding, the authenticity, it's so real. It doesn't feel like I just put something there to go have a drink and it's dark. You leave there and you feel like you saw something that changed your life. I'm not kidding you. I tell him you could put this show anywhere in the United States and it's going to be one of the best shows because of him and his unique skill set that could talk, the stories, the history, the music, the tap. You just don't see that. So, we got really lucky, but we learned from that. We learned about being authentic and finding someone in the community that people can connect to. And so
Yeah.
this community notion, we are leaning into that so heavily right now on all of our new properties and existing.
Well, I mean, you think about a larger trend, and just not even our hospitality, but just society right now. Like, we are craving authenticity with AI, and all of this technology coming, which obviously there are some elements that we can we can do to improve the guest experience, help our employees out. But from a guest perspective, we're looking and we're craving that authentic experience there, and it's more than just hanging up uh, a piece of art in the lobby and saying, well, this was a local artist here. That maybe 90% of your travelers are going to walk by and not recognize the uniqueness of it. So being able to incorporate that in, your culinary, your F&B elements of your lobby, but you also have to have your staff members on board. They have to know the history behind this too. They have to buy into that story as well, because if it stops at a building, or if it stops at an experience, and your employees aren't in that, it gets lost. It's just like a game of telephone, because your
Hmm.
staff is very, very critical in telling that story to your guest and making sure that falls on on their shoulders, the weight of that, and saying, wow, this is really cool that I'm in this historic building that's been here for 100 years, and I'm getting to experience this. So all very, very cool stuff, and right on point with what we talked about on this podcast before, Paul. But let's switch to one of those autograph collection properties that are in the pipeline. You said there was a big pipeline. Well, you've got one of them in there. You've already have a major footprint in Texas, where I'm from originally. You're expanding in Texas in fall 2024. The first autograph collection hotel in Frisco, which has just been, I mean, that was booming when I lived there, a decade ago. Hall Park Hotel. Discuss the exciting development and what travelers can expect from this new project.
Yeah, that's going to be. I mean, it's literally 100 yards from the Star, which is the big training facility that Jerry Jones built for the Cowboys, and it's a whole immersion engagement that he created, and we were lucky enough that to be selected by Craig Hall, who owned a lot of buildings in that area and was one of the first developers of that area, and he actually raised a couple of existing buildings and then built this new hotel and apartments and some office, but. Um, when we got involved with that, I would say Craig's passion is art, and so this hotel will have a park that flanks it, a major park, and he's going to do a lot of art in the park, statuary, special, very unique. I don't even. It's being curated at a very high level, and I think one of the challenges was while on the surface you would think that the notion of an art hotel would be easy. It's very difficult because you're not going to go probably do cowboy football art and that's going to work. I mean, that would be your first thing you would think of is, oh, I'm by the Star. I'm going to do pictures of former cowboy football players. But not
Yeah,
not
Emmett
not
Smith, Troy Aikman on the
yeah,
wall. Yeah.
not it. So once again, we got involved. He was already actually under construction and had laid out what he thought his vision was for the restaurant and bar. And we were like, Craig, let's rethink this. We want two bars, and your family has a history also with the wine business. They own Hall Wines in Napa, and so we created a separate bar and wine area, a lounge that would focus on selling very special cheeses where you could go in and select 20 or 30. uh, I forgot what they call a cheese sommelier, but it's called like a smelier or something like that. It's instead of
Okay.
sommelier. But so we did that, and then we created another bar and restaurant with a large outdoor space that pulled in the park. And so again, we thought we'll lead this with the food and beverage, and I'll tie into more the soft story to Craig Hall, which was the wines, and he and his wife Catherine, and then. And then the art would follow. And so that's where we're at now. The property will open at the end of the year, and the art's being designed and activated for it based on what we created there. And it will have a lot of really large suites. It's going to have 60 suites, which is really unique. And so I think it's going to provide a product in that part of Frisco that's super elevated. It's a beautiful design, and I think it'll be one of the nicer autographs probably within the system when it's all said and done.
So cool and fascinating really to hear kind of again the thought process that goes behind that. I'm sure all of the renderings, all of the ideas that kind of get put on the table and then carefully kind of there's a reason for everything. And we've had a couple of brand leaders on recently on the podcast, and from a curtain in a room to an extra sink in a suite, there's a reason for everything. And whether it's the guest feedback that they're hearing, whether it's associate feedback they're hearing, or owner development, and trying to incorporate their story, which is really really cool, into a new property like that. So very excited to see that open at the end of the year. And again, if you have the opportunity to go there now, you've got some background and can kind of understand the thinking and thought process behind that. So
Right.
um you've got such a collection. We've talked about already, ultra unique lifestyle hotels. Uh, One of the ways to set expectations, we've talked a lot about it, social media marketing, right? That I'm sure those experiences that you've shared so far, those rooftop bars on a sunset on a Friday night with a packed crowd and music going, I'm sure that's all over Instagram and
Mhm.
TikTok and Facebook.
Yeah.
So tell us your philosophy on kind of strategic social media marketing, especially with these unique hotels that where you have to tell a story, so everyone can experience the elevated experience that you're
Yeah.
offering.
Uh, Again, another great question, and we this again. I keep referring to COVID, but that's kind of a point where I think a lot of the world was reset.
Sure.
But prior to that, we had just decided as a company that we were going to have a social media person at every property. That we weren't going to hire a firm. I mean, we still work with firms, and we weren't going to do it from a corporate level, although we have that and then help direct them. But we wanted it at the property in the moment, conveying the message. And what I had heard and really resonated with me was that 80% plus of the decisions people were making on where they were staying was influenced by the internet. They were going somewhere, you know, either they're going to Bonvoy, they're going to Instagram, they're going to TripAdvisor, they're going to Google, they're going somewhere when they're either looking or confirming that's where they want to go. And so, what do they see? Does what they see say I want to be there? So we had made that decision, and then COVID hit, and obviously people were furloughing, but that was the one position we did not let go. And we decided that we didn't know how long it's going to last, but we wanted to keep in front of people. We wanted to keep our hotels still in front of people and not miss that window, and they forget about you. So it's been the best thing we've done. And if our company's involved in a hotel, we have uh, and we started off calling this person an experienced curator, and then we went further with that whole notion. Said all of our employees are experienced curators. All of our people are there trying to deliver our story and our message. And we don't really, for example, I don't say every one of you can post on Instagram what's going on here. We don't want that kind of, we
Right.
want to control it. But they're still doing, they're talking, they're still posting their own personal things about what they're doing and what's going on. So we've seen a lot of growth, and we've seen a lot of growth in our activations occurring with the local community. So in our project in Grapevine, Texas, which is the Venn Hotel, I would say 70 to 80% of our guests that are engaging in our property are outside. They're not hotel guests. They are people being driven to the property by activation from our social media. And then guess what? The old word of mouth. you tell, I had this great experience, and you tell a story, and then this story, five other people hear it, and it's, you remember the book, the Tipping Point, that was very popular,
Yeah.
25 years ago. That was what the whole notion was:
Sure.
finding important people, mavens, if you will, that would say something great about your widget or your hotel, and then it self manifests. So it's as simple as that. It's good old fashioned word of mouth that you're now doing through social media.
Yeah, word of mouth to, potentially, back in the day, it just used to be maybe your close network of maybe 20 family friends. And now it's, you have access putting it on an organic page of, 200 million, sometimes hundreds of millions of people of seeing that and exposing your brand. And you hit it the nail right on the head, Paul, as far as what we preach here of consistency. And it's so funny to see that something stemmed from your social media position to you opening that up to the entire your entire associate over there at Coury Hospitality, because you realize that the importance and the power
Hmm.
that this can have on influencing future travel there. So,
Hmm.
um, speaking of marketing for Coury Hospitality, you guys have, along with your beautiful portfolio, a beautifully designed website, and on it, you're profiled on there, Paul, saying we're not just developers, we're storytellers. Our properties come alive through storytelling. Now, we've talked a little bit about some tools that you can use to do the storytelling, but how do you and your team of experienced curators, storytell for your properties?
Well, we also have a term now is activate every inch, and
Okay.
we've actually found, in the case of the Vin again, which is in Grapevine, it's a wine inspired hotel. But after we opened in September of 20, we have created two more special speakeasy type rooms. And so, through, again, like, I can create a beautiful room, but then what do I do to activate it and bring it to life? And that's the story part. That's the rest of the story. And that's what brings the people in, because they understand your messaging and they get it. They look at that and they say, that's what I'm looking for. And then they become part of the story,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So it's actually, it's simple, but it's not. Trying to activate something takes a lot of work. Takes a lot of work. And we have stand-ups like every hotel does, but we also have constant brainstorming sessions about what do we do now and how do we keep it fresh. What's it's there's an opportunity with everything. The Kentucky Derby, Mother's Day, on and on. But you can create, Cinco de Mayo. There's standards out there, but then you have to come up with your own. You know, how many Taco Tuesdays have you seen out there?
Yeah.
Wind down Wednesday.
Right.
So it's all trying to find a reason to create a new chapter for people to come and have fun.
Yeah. And it's so easy on the flip side as a traveler looking for those experience, because we do it in our, I know I certainly do. We do it in our own um research online when we're looking. We want to feel a part of something, a part of the story, and a part of experience, and be the first one to share it, by the way. Right?
Yeah.
How good does that feel when you go to a really cool spot, restaurant, or anything like that, and you're the one that gets to say, hey, you have to check out this spot. And then all of your friends and family are like, wow, that was incredible. That was a really cool experience that I had there. So, yeah.
Well, Ryan, there's a whole trend going on right now of private clubs and privatizing and even taking it to the next level of exclusivity. And, there's different opinions about, is that right or wrong? But the truth is, people are all about that. If you put up a sign that says members only, you drive people nuts. It's like, what's behind the door? Well, we can't show you unless you're a member. I mean, it's happening everywhere. I just toured a hotel in Arizona, and they have a very high end club, and it's $90,000 to join, and it's
Wow.
within a hotel. I toured another one in Newport Beach in a high end hotel. Same deal. We did it on a very small scale with a 45 seat wine club that we call Cave Society. So uh, we're now looking on one of our designs that within the restaurant space and the bar, we're going to create a private club within that. So let's say you have fish in a regular restaurant. Well, this version may have tableside soul manure where they come and present at tableside. I mean, that's an example of how you might elevate that experience for someone. And if they want that and they want to be in that exclusive world, they're going to hotels to find that.
Yeah.
Isn't that ironic? I mean, you
Yeah.
used to be a hotel was a place you would go to sleep, to to park your stuff and be treated well.
Four
But
walls and a bed, right?
yeah,
That
yeah,
that was the old
it's just
saying.
yeah, it's the price of poker is going up,
Yeah.
and particularly in this space, it's just you're going to have to always find another way to give the guests an experience they can't find somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a fascinating trend. We'll continue to keep an eye on, but certainly goes right in line with what you talked about getting the community involved there, and super smart idea. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Checking down your LinkedIn feed for Coury Hospitality. Make sure you follow them. You recently announced your new motto, "Unmatched Moments." Share us a little bit more about this, the idea behind the motto, and the feedback you're getting from your associates on your town hall tour that you guys are doing right now.
Mm. Yeah, you know, we believe that again, for us to tell a story, to have an unmatched moment that occurs at every interaction with the guest. Every interaction could be a chance to create a memory, good or bad. If someone interacts bad with you, you created an unmatched moment also. So
Oh,
we're interested in the good unmatched moments. First, I want to qualify that.
yeah,
But so we're really with our going to the people with our little show, and we're town halls, we're meeting with them, we're making sure they understand the culture. We want them to be a part of the culture, but we're not just saying do this because you should. We're treating them the same way. We've created two platforms of bonus programs for all of our line level people, including housekeepers, including front desk. And they have opportunities in two different ways to make meaningful bonuses, not just like a $50, gift card or something like that. So our idea is that we're going to commit to you and show you loyalty, and hopefully you'll learn that that's a two-way street. And again, I'm not I'm old enough where I've got some interesting historical perspective. But the notion of loyalty has changed. I mean, Gen Z and millennials have a different idea about how long you work someplace. 6 months and a year is a long job.
sure.
I mean, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm trying to get to a point. I if I'm going to create people, if I want people working for me that that buy into our philosophy about engaging with our guests and creating unmatched moments, they've got to feel like we're treating them the same way, and that we're they're respected and they're treated with a commitment, and then in turn they're going to share that with who they interact with. It's an interesting, you know, uh, management philosophy that's existed for a long time, but instead of it coming from them to us, we're trying to take it from us to them.
Yeah, certainly an interesting way. Again, at the top of the episode, we talked about it. I mean, we still are combating those staffing challenges. So, finding ways to connect with your associates because you're right. I mean, there was a time in COVID where we had to furlough. We had to lay off a lot of these associates. So building that trust is going to be super important to kind of change the narrative of what loyalty looks like
Hmm.
in hospitality. So
Hmm.
your team members aren't jumping ship for another dollar an hour across the street or anything like that. You want to create an environment and have buy-in, like I talked about earlier. I mean, if that line of communication can move from the building to your associates to your guests, that is how you create those memorable experience. Certainly, so interesting to hear that and your thoughts on staffing and the culture over there at Coury Hospitality. But we're going to jump into some rapid fire here before we wrap up. And I typically save this line of questioning for what's called our Spotlight series, where we talk about one particular hotel. But I think you got such a unique portfolio over there. I'm going to try to stump you with some of these. So, favorite view at one of your properties?
Um, I think my favorite view is the Vin because when we designed it, um, we're in a older community that really leaned on the train world, and they have
Tarantula, right?
uh, train. Oh,
The
you said
tarantula train. Yeah.
oh, is that what it's called
Right. Well, it did, back when I was there, that's what it was called. Yeah.
in Grapevine?
Yeah. Grapevine.
Oh,
Yeah.
we call it the wine train,
Oh, okay. I like
but
that name better.
it's also Thomas the Tank when they change it, and it's
Mm.
also the
Polar
San
Express.
or the Express, the Polar
Yep.
Express. And then what happened was they also have this high speed rail now that we're on the first stop from DFW, and it's a bullet train, Swiss bullet train. So we built this massive window that when you walk in, that's the money shot. You see the train yard, you see our outdoor activation, and it you really feel like you step back in time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. Favorite fun fact about one of your properties, Paul?
Okay, so my first hotel, which is the Tulsa Ambassador, was built by a gentleman, General Patrick Hurley, who went on to become Secretary of War under Hoover. And his father in law was Admiral Byrd from World War One that led the Atlantic Fleet. So he named this, and he was ambassador to uh, Iran, ambassador to Russia, ambassador to China. This guy was a major player. So this hotel was called the Ambassador. He did another one called the Commodore in deference to his father-in-law. And I really felt such a interesting connection with that history. And then I was able to find his son, who was a very famous artist, Wilson Hurley, who did big landscapes and like he's in the Smithsonian, he's in the Cowboy Hall of Fame, some of his pieces. But I was able to meet him and get to know him before he passed, and just that he had an estranged relationship with his father, but when during their life for various reasons. And when I met him, the son, he was 80 years old, right, or 70 years old. But it was cathartic, and it did some healing with him and his father in a strange way for this hotel to be restored and bringing him in. He had said I would never come back to Tulsa, and I was young in my career in the hotel, but that's a great to me something that I'll always feel like was a real historical connection.
Yeah, that's super cool. And again, one of those stories that you see a piece of art, or I would encourage. Obviously, we've got a lot of hotel owners, associates listening to this podcast. I mean, that's go ask about these pieces of art that you see, and that's going to be one of my next questions here in a minute. But there could be some very special story behind some of this stuff. So, favorite signature dish.
Beef Wellington.
All right.
And that goes back to the Chalkboard restaurant that's in Tulsa Hotel That restaurant had been in some form or fashion since the 70s. That was always their signature dish. We've kept it. We're doing another chalkboard. We've kept it. I've used it in Kansas City, and it's an old school classic that you don't see very often. And if you haven't ever had a beef Wellington, I encourage everybody to try a beef Wellington.
I like it. All right. And last one, favorite piece of art.
Okay, so we we're opening another VIN in uh, Rogers, Arkansas, which is the Bentonville headquarters,
Sure.
or Walmart headquarters. And we were in Aspen for the wine and food show last June, and I went into a gallery and I found this bronze. It's about 12 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet wide, 4 feet tall, and they're big grapes, cast grapes on a deal. And the artist is a very famous Chinese artist, Robert. I'm not sure, Kuo, Robert Koo, and he's like 85 years old, and this was the last piece he cast. So we bought that in anticipation to make it a major focal piece for the new VIN in Rogers. And so when we've designed our lobby and all this, we've taken this big piece. We have it. We've figured out how we're going to hang it, and it's going to be displayed over the front desk, and it's going to be a showstopper, and
Yeah.
it is magnificent. So that's my first real big investment in something that I consider true art, and I'm really excited about having people see that and talk about that.
That's interesting. That's one of those stories that you hear. The lobby was planned probably around a piece of art and not the other way around. But I'm sure we'll see it all posted all over social
Oh
media
yeah,
as we talked about on this
yeah,
episode.
yeah,
As we wrap up here, we always like to wrap up these episodes, especially with trailblazers such as yourself and fast moving hotel management companies like Coury Hospitality with a little bit of a glimpse into the future. What's your vision for Coury Hospitality over the next 5 years or so?
uh, I mean, we're going to stay true to what we do. We're going to stay in this space. We're really focused on it. We've got a lot in the pipeline in different stages, and needless to say, the economy's kind of slowed up some financing for us and for other people. But I could see us with 20 to 30 more over the next 5 years, and we have a couple of brands we're going to develop. I think the VIN is one. We have a concept we're working on in Frisco that is really taking it to the next level. It's a very fine hotel with 5 restaurants attached to it,
Wow.
and people are doing that now. Sam Fox just did one in Arizona. He did the global ambassador, and he put his brands on there, his restaurant brands on there. We're partnering with a restaurant group. They'll do some of those, but they'll be attached to the hotel. Think of a food hall, except instead of individual small kiosks, real restaurants, right?
Yeah.
With their own outdoor space, you can share certain spaces. I think this is a trend. I think this is going to be keeping it to the next level in what people's expectations become to draw them in.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, you certainly on this podcast episode has added some things to my travel bucket list. So I really appreciate
Yeah,
the time, Paul. Thank you for joining me here on the Sweet Spot. And yeah, we hope we'll keep an eye on Coury Hospitality and all these exciting projects you got going on.
thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you thinking of us.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone listening to the podcast, and we'll talk to you next time on the Sweet Spot.